if you are born again, if you have a new spirit, if you have a new hope. It talks about people that are born of the Spirit. They freely confess that they are strangers here, and they're looking for a city whose builder and maker is God. Something shatters that illusion. And for me, it was the loss of my first son, my firstborn son. And it was a terrible time. It was me, my young wife. We were in Germany, no family at all. We were praying together. We were doing what people would think. But I remember so well when that happened, and everything was shattered for me. If creation is groaning, as Paul says, and I believe that it is, it's been subjected to this frustration by the fall, and it longs for the revealing of the sons of man. I hope that you'll be awakened again and again to the reality that this world isn't our home. It's a fallen, desolate place. Hey, welcome to podcast number 4. Hopefully on our way to 40. There's 3 that are out. I said in my very first one that I hope each podcast I become more settled and more focused. I have a tendency to go kind of all over the place and go down some rabbit holes, but I'm trying to stay more focused in on the topic of the poem. And tonight, the poem is called Creation Groans. And I wrote this. It's a lot of these poems were written some time ago, but every one of them, they've come to me at different times. There's ideas, an experience I may have had, a book that I may have read, but a memory will come to mind, and it'll just inspire me to write the poem. And there's a verse in Romans, a couple of verses that I want to open with on this podcast. And it's in Romans 8, starting at verse 19. And it says, "For the creation waits in eager expectation for the children of God to be revealed. For the creation was subjected to frustration, not by its own choice, but by the will of the one who subjected it, in hope that the creation itself will be liberated from its bondage to decay and brought into the freedom and glory of the children of God. We know that the whole creation has been groaning as in the pains of childbirth right up to the present time. Not only so, but we ourselves who have the first fruits of the Spirit groan inwardly as we wait eagerly for our adoption to sonship, the redemption of our bodies, for in this hope we are saved." And when I read that, if I would have read that probably in my youth, it wouldn't have meant as much, if anything at all. But if you live enough life, if you do have the first fruits of the Spirit, if you are, I hate the cliche because it's so overused, but if you are born again, if you have a new spirit, if you have a new hope, in Hebrews, I won't look it up, but it talks about people that are born of the Spirit, and they freely confess that they are strangers here, and they're looking for a city whose builder and maker is God, and they confess that they're strangers here, sojourners in this world. And I know that probably many are more than at home here in this world. But if you live long enough, I don't know how you can come away with a fair assessment that this place is not anything but fallen. Yeah, there's wonderful times. There's wonderful memories. There's family. There's love. There's romance. All of that. But it is all lived out under this veil of the fall. And there was a movie. I taught high school English, middle school for a while. And I had them watch this movie called The Great Debaters. And it had Denzel Washington in it. And there's a scene where the young boy, his father is Forrest Whitaker, and he's a president. And this is in the I think it's in Marshall, Texas, but it was a black debate team, and it was during the just the terrible time of segregation, and I'm looking for the word. prejudiced, and all that went on during that time. And the young man, who's the son of the president of the college, I think it was a black college in Texas, but he gets to go out with the debate team. He's very young. I want to say he's maybe 13, 14, but he goes out and he basically sees the world. They come up on a lynching. The girl that he's got a terrible crush on, he catches her in this old cabin with the older man, with the younger guy, and breaks his heart. And when he finally gets back home, he's beaten. He's beaten, and all he wants to do is see his father. That's it. And he runs in the house. He first calls out to his mother. She's not there. And his father was a stern man, but a fair man. And it was Forrest Whitaker's character. And he looks and sees him in the study, and he's studying. And his father stands up and starts to walk toward him, and the young man just makes a beeline for his father, and he just embraces him. And he saw what the world was. The blinders had been removed. And I've had things happen to me in my life that have let me know that this world is not my ultimate home. There was a song, I have my notes here, and some of this is just coming to me. This isn't in my notes, but B.J. Thomas, when he became a Christian, if you remember, the raindrops keep falling on my head guy, he had a song that he talked about once he became a believer, and it's called Home. And he says, when I'm feeling lonely, when I'm feeling blue, it's such a joy to know, my Lord, that I'm only passing through. I'm headed home where I belong. And I went to college after I retired from the military. And one day I was just going across campus. It was a beautiful day. I had framed houses in the dead heat of summer before I started back to college. And it was a brutal summer. I didn't know there was a lot of things pending with my VA benefits, and I finally got into college. And it was just one of those beautiful days. And I was walking across campus, and I was so thankful to be in college. I was 41. I'd been in the Airborne Infantry. I'd been in the Coast Guard. I'd lived all over. And I remember this day, even though it was beautiful, I felt fully alive, fully grateful. But this old song came in my head by a guy named Michael Card. And I'm just going to read you a few of the lyrics from that song. And I remember pausing on campus that day, and just the song was just in my heart. And it says, there is a joy in the journey. There's a light we can love on the way. There's a wonder and wildness to life, and freedom for those who obey. And all those who seek it shall find it, a pardon for all who believe, hope for the hopeless, and sight for the blind. To all who've been born of the Spirit, and who share incarnation with Him, who belong to eternity, stranded in time, and weary of struggling with sin. That resonated with me so deeply. And I think that if you have the first fruits of the Spirit, you're going to know that struggle between your new nature and the old nature, and it wearies you. There's a poem I'll read. There's 40 of them. We're on number 4. But there's one I'm going to read, and it's the only one out of all the 40 that doesn't rhyme. I wrote it in Germany, but it's called Nothing Between Us. But there's a few verses in that speak about the sins that surprised me, the ones I didn't think I would do. And there have been moments in my life where that depravity in my heart has been so revealed to me that if not for God's grace, if not for His mercy, it would be too much. It would be too much, and I would despair of any hope at all. While we're here, while we're this side of eternity, we're going to have that. We're going to have those battles. We're going to have those moments of discipline. We're going to have those moments of disillusionment. The back of my book, that's what it talks about, seasons of disillusionment. Some of that came from my own willfulness, some of my own hard-headedness, but some of it just came from life. I remember when I was 23 years old, I was married to my first wife, but we were in Germany, and it was our first child. And life had been, I had a really rough childhood. My father was a Vietnam veteran. He was an alcoholic. And there were issues there with both of my parents. I was raised in a Southern Baptist church, but it could be, I think, sometimes really heavy on the hell. And some children, if you grow up, you're not like, you're not super, you're not doted on or you're not coddled. And there's a lot of trauma. And your parents are high octane thoroughbreds. They fight. You're caught up in the middle of that. It's this maelstrom of chaos, and you don't feel you feel less than, you feel wounded, you feel defeated, you feel dirty, even as a young child. And then you have some sweaty fat preacher. I'm speaking in generalizations, beating the pulpit, saying you're going to go to hell, you're going to go to hell, you're going to burn forever. And I remember as a young boy laying in my bed, 8, 9, 10 years old, terrible, almost a panic, thinking of eternity burning in hell. I don't think a 9 and a 10 and 11-year-old, they don't need to be worried about burning forever in hell. And this is just an aside. If you're using hell to put people in line, you're a Nazi, you're a jerk. Hell wasn't meant for you to scare people and put them in line. Do I believe there's judgment? Absolutely. I don't know any more about hell than I do about heaven, other than what the Bible tells me. But I think anything taken too far destroys the reason it was taken in the first place. And I think so many times these concepts of hell and burning and all of these things, it's meant to control. It's meant to control. I told someone one time, I gave them an analogy. I said, if I was sitting at a table with a couple and they were married and they seemed, relatively happy, and he went to the restroom and I leaned over to his wife and I said, y'all seem to have a really good marriage. What's your secret? And she says, well, I hope he doesn't come back and hear this. But if I ever leave him, he's going to beat me to a pulp, and he doesn't even want me to die soon. He's going to eventually let me die, maybe, but he's going to torture me in the most grotesque, gruesome way. It is going to be brutal. That's why I stay with him. The whole picture of that marriage would change. If there's not a beauty, if there's not a winsomeness, if there's not a glory to God that transcends this, you're going to burn in hell if you don't do everything I say, you're missing the whole point. If God's beauty and goodness and his creation and the gifts of him, if that doesn't save you, some fat, sweaty preacher pounding the pulpit about hell is not going to save you either. You're going to end up resenting the very God that you are supposedly running to be saved. And that's just a fact. And that's the rabbit hole that I'm on. But I wanted to say, when I was 23, with a challenging youth, but the first time that life, James Dobson, he was a late Christian psychologist, but he talked about this bubble that so many of us live in. And it takes a while for that to get punctured, and everything, you're kind of in this equilibrium. You're in this little snow globe of, it's Christmas time and birthdays and sports and friends and laughter. And then something shatters that globe, something shatters that illusion. And for me, it was the loss of my first son, my firstborn son. And it was a terrible time. It was me, my young wife. We were in Germany, no family at all. We had a young couple there with us that I'm so thankful for, Scott and Nicole, awesome couple. And they were our strength during that time. And it was a time, Julie and I were in church. We were praying together. We were doing what people would think, oh, they're checking off all the boxes. And I hate that term, by the way. I hate it. I'll get into that maybe, but I hate the whole, oh, you check all the boxes. Great. I'm glad. I'm a grocery list. But I remember so well when that happened, and everything was shattered for me. And prior to that, Pan Am 103. I used to meet flights at the Flughafen in my job for the Army. And I'd met a flight that was connecting to Pan Am 103 in England. And that flight went on and was blown up over Lockerbie, Scotland. It was terrible. I think it was December the 22nd, 1988. And it was right before Christmas. And there were so many young soldiers going home for leave. And I remember my wife and I at the time, we were sitting in our little small German apartment in Offenbach, Germany, and AFN, Armed Forces Network, came on. And I remember they led with that story, and we just had this hollow feeling. It was like, wow, life isn't safe anymore. And it was really not going to be safe anymore. And about 2 months later, February 18th, 1989, we lost our son. And it was like and the irony is we lost our son, of course, to death. And then the Army, someone forgot to sign the death certificate. And we get back to Oklahoma, my home state, for the funeral, and it lost his body. We had to get a senator involved, thank God. I think it was David Boren, honestly, at the time. And we ended up finding his body. We got him back for the funeral. But it was a terrible time. It was a tragic time. And that was my first realization that this life isn't all every day's Friday, with Joel Osteen in the 1980s mullet and his white pearly teeth. And he's probably worth about $200 million. And I'm sure every day's Friday for him. But if you're a young soldier with your young wife and you've lost your first son on a cold German night in the middle of Frankfurt, every day's not Friday. And this place has fallen. And if creation is groaning, as Paul says, and I believe that it is, it's been subjected to this frustration by the fall, and it longs for the revealing of the sons of man. And that was the inspiration for the poem that I'm going to read tonight. I'm almost there. I want to keep these at like 30 minutes. I'm doing good tonight. Hopefully I'm a little bit better, more focused. I struggle doing these just because I've mentioned in the first podcast, I was diagnosed with PTSD, and I'll talk about, there's some poems that I have that address that. I think it came a lot from my youth. When my dad came back from Vietnam in '69, I was barely 5 years old, and there was terrible things that he did. I think it was his own PTSD. I mean, he had just basically been ripped out of the jungles of Vietnam combat. He was 11 Bravo infantryman, and that's why I went 11 Bravo. And it was a terrible, brutal time. And I think it did damage to my nervous system. And I have struggled at different times, sometimes almost incapacitating in my life. Fortunately, those have been spaced out. But I've learned through so many different things that we live in a fallen world. And I don't know how that's not more evident. I know scriptures talks about that the ruler of this world, he's blinded the eyes of those that don't believe. And maybe I don't understand all of that. And, we can debate Calvinism, Arminianism, Pelagianism, the Catholics, the Protestants. I have a very good friend. He's actually my cousin. But he's a very honest person, a very true believer. But we talk about this, and we talk about how frustrating it is. Sometimes when you wade into this morass of all of these opinions, and everybody's got an opinion, and everybody is the authority. And I would much rather listen to the man that will just tell me what he knows and what he doesn't know. And he's not trying to convince me of everything that he's sure of. To be honest, I'm not sure of anything. I believe the gospel. Do I still struggle with my doubts? Absolutely. There was an old song we used to sing in the Baptist church growing up called "Just as I Am," without one plea, but that the Lamb was slain for me. I'm probably butchering this, but it says that He comes with many turmoils and doubts, but He just comes, and He comes on the hope that the salvation Christ accomplished in His death, the blood shed by the Lamb, is going to be enough. And it's a comforting thing when we can rest in that. And it's been very difficult. I've had seasons of my life where I haven't rested very easily. I've strived. There's a song, I'm going to quote a piece by one of my favorite singers named Keith Green. And when I was closest to Jesus in my youth, I'm talking early 20s, it was so strange. If I felt close to Jesus, then Keith's music really moved me and touched my heart. If I was away from Jesus, the last song I wanted to hear was anything by Keith Green. But Keith sung a song and it said, my child, my child, why are you striving? You can't add one thing to what's been done for you. I did it all while I was dying. Rest in your faith and my peace will come to you. And I've had to learn that lesson over and over and over. And my cousin and I, we've both discussed Catholicism, and we've gravitated towards that at different times. But I told him, I don't want to get into a system where I'm always having to jump a hurdle. Where there's this mixture of my good works and God, and we have to parse this out, and there's gradations of this, and there's amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. That's the most precious thing to me, that I'm lost and I'm found. And it's grace from beginning to end. I can't jump enough hurdles. I can't go to enough confessions. I can't pray enough rosaries. I can't do enough. It's been done for me. And I have to rest in that. I'm not saying that some of these things aren't good. I'm not talking about any religion for or against. But I know the older I get, that Jesus Christ has to be my true north and my only north. No megachurch preacher with a pair of skinny jeans and a medium shirt from the Baby Gap with a cool mic, looking cool on the stage, and a fighter bomber jacket, and no pope. Jesus. That's it. Jesus. With his spirit. I think in James it said they will all, in one of the Gospels, Jesus said they will all be taught of God. And in James, I think, or John, I think it's John, one of the first John possibly, not the Gospel of John, but he said, and you have no need that any man teach you, because the anointing, the spirit that is in you will teach you and it will lead you. And I believe that. I believe that the older I get, because nothing makes any sense, as crazy as I've been at times in my life, and all of the turmoil that I was raised in, and all of the chaos, and my own rebellion, and my own sins, and my own wickedness. It's that amazing grace that pulls me out, that picks me up, that reorients me, that dusts me off, and sets me back on my feet. And it's a process, and it's something that I've had to learn again and again. But I always return to the cross, to the fundamentals. It's Jesus and him alone. I think in Revelations it said that when things get crazy, and I know there's all kinds of interpretations on that, but it talks about they overcame him, and I think they're talking about the Antichrist or the world system at that time, by the word of their testimony and the blood of the Lamb, for they did not love their lives unto death. Death didn't have a hold on them anymore. And I'll talk about that in another podcast, because I've struggled with the terrible, me and my daughter Rachel, we've talked about it, this visceral fear of death. And I've come a long ways with that, believe me, but it's been tough. And I love that verse, that they overcame him and they did not love their lives unto death. Okay, leading up to the poem, I wanted to talk about Keith Green opened a song, and it was called I Can't Wait to Get to Heaven, and he would speak at the beginning of this song. And this is what he says. He says, I look around at the world and I see all the beauty that God made. I see the forest and the trees and all the things. And it says in the Bible that he made them in 6 days. And I don't know if they're a literal 6 days or not. Scientists would say no. Some theologians would say yes. It doesn't matter to me. But I know that Jesus Christ has been preparing a home for me and for some of you for 2,000 years. And if this world took 6 days and that home took 2,000 years, hey man, this is like living in a garbage can compared to what's going on up there. And I love that so much, and it kind of speaks to that realization that we are living east of Eden. We are living in a fallen world controlled by the enemy, controlled by the prince of the power of the air, the dark one, the evil one. Um, it's his domain, and we are invaders into that, occupiers. And the poem, I was gonna while I look it up, I walk this trail where I'm living right now, and I've been living in Mississippi. I'm in Oklahoma, and maybe going back to Mississippi soon. But there's a trail that I walk here, and I was walking it yesterday, and it was so pretty. It was nippy. The air was cool, and the sun was out though. But I go. It's kind of this labyrinth, and it takes you back and up hills and down hills. But it's very barren here now. It's beautiful, but the trees are barren. It's winter. And I thought when spring comes, it's going to be so beautiful, and all of these trees are full, and the water, the air is warmer, and there's more wildlife and birds. It's just going to be so. Spring has come, and that's, to me, is such a weak representation of the restoration of all things, where creation is groaning. So this leads me up to my poem, and I'm going to close with the poem. I'm getting close to 30 minutes, but this is called Creation Groans, and it's pretty self-explanatory, but it's me writing it as someone who actually is speaking to a tree, and this tree is trying to remind this human about the coming restoration of all things. And I opened it with a quote that I read earlier. So this is Creation Groans. It's page 16 of my book. We know that the whole creation has been groaning, and as in the pains of childbirth right up to the present time, Romans 8:22. I stood by a tree that the wind had just shaken. All its limbs were creaking like it was awakened, and it's hard to explain what I felt in the air, yet somehow I knew the tree knew I was there. Then I heard what sounded like someone who's moaning. Was it just the tree's limbs? No, I'm sure it was groaning. In the faintest of whispers, it softly appealed. When, oh when, are the children revealed? Children, I said in a startled reply. Was it all in my head? Can a tree really sigh? But the winds blew again, tree leaves in my face, and it spoke once again. Such a desolate place. A desolate place, but the fields are so green. What are you saying? What do you mean? Are these words in my head coming from me, or am I actually conversing with this ancient old tree? Then once again the breeze animated the old tree's limbs, and it asked unabated. You have to know you're his greatest creation, and despite the great fall, you will be his summation. I nervously blinked. Could someone be there? Have I lost my mind now conversing with air? Suddenly startled, I heard the tree shout, and I questioned no more. There remained not a doubt. Me and my kind, we've all had our fill of subjected frustration that wasn't our will. I know you have felt it, this mysterious groaning, and heard of the stories about the blood that's atoning. I stood there silent, then slowly replied, Yes, sir, I have. About the one that has died? Is that all that you know? All that you've heard? That it was brutal and tragic, that death had the last word? If I truly believed that, then I couldn't breathe air. I would wither and die from relentless despair. But death couldn't hold him, despite giving its best. In 3 days he arose, and creation was blessed. From my days as a sapling to this aged old tree, my groanings increasing, I so longed to be free. My eyes were now blurred by the tears on my face. The news was too good, my mind couldn't keep pace. But deep in my heart, I sensed a slight shift. The words of this tree had given a gift. The first fruits of the Spirit in my heart did abide, and this new inward groaning could not be denied. Now I'm waiting and eager, with new hope on the rise, for creation's release when he appears in the skies. Our Redeemer is coming to protracted ovation, for he who is worthy of our perfect oblation. As I was reading that, I had a memory that just come to my mind. I'll share that in closing. My grandmother Hancock, who raised me, She was really, I think, the hand that rocked my cradle. My mother worked. She was a tremendously hard worker, but the daily routine rhythms of living fell to my grandmother. And I remember I was in youth group. I was a little bit older. And one night, our pastor at our church said, does someone want to give a testimony? And my Mama Hancock stood up. She was on the other side of the church. I was like, oh, great. That's my Mama. And she had this southern accent. And she said, Brother David, you know, some people talk about Jesus like they're afraid, or she went through it, but she said, to me, it's like a friend that you haven't seen in a long, long time. And I know when I see him, that's what it's going to feel like. You've always known them. It's this friend. And when you see them, you're going to know them. And I just remember, I'm 61 years old. I was probably 15 the night that she gave that testimony. And it stuck with me my entire life. She knew Jesus. She wasn't perfect. My God, when Christians come and if a Christian comes to you with the hair parted and they're in church all the time and the preacher loves them and the deacon loves them, be very leery. We're broken people. We're sinners at the fountain of grace. And my grandmother, my mama, she was not perfect. But man, she had a love for Jesus, and you could see it. You knew it. I've heard that woman pray so many prayers on her knees when I was a little boy. And I'm telling you, those are blessings. If you have someone in your life like that, be so grateful for them. And I think that some of her prayers for me, even though she's gone, are still being answered. And if there was anything in my life that showed me the reality of God and his son, Jesus Christ, it was my grandmother's faith. You could see it. It was real. She loved Jesus. It's so crazy in this world for people to think of that, you know? I remember Obama when he was in his arrogancy, and he would say, oh, they're clingers. They cling to their Bibles and their guns. My grandma didn't have a gun, but she had a Bible, and she clung to that Savior in that Bible. And I'm so grateful for her and the faith that she instilled in me. And I hope for you that's listened to this tonight, I hope that you'll feel those first fruits of the Spirit. I hope that you'll be awakened again and again to the reality that this world isn't our home. It's a fallen, desolate place, and that redemption is coming and creation is groaning. And I hope those first fruits of the Spirit will be in your heart and be in your life, and you'll feel that too. And you'll wait. You'll wait for his appearance and the restoration of all things. Until that time, let's hope in his mercy and his grace. And I look forward to podcast number 5. Thank you for watching.